human being with feelings, and I'm here to answer your questions. I'm not here to debate, I'm not here to argue. I really want to get to the heart of your concerns and try to address whatever's on your mind. Before we get started, I just want to introduce my family. Kids, please stand up. Brady, wave. Jeff, wave. Brady and Jeff are both freshmen at Bonita Springs High School. Patty. Brady and Jack are 15. Patty is 17, and she is a junior, rising senior, like my first graduating senior, at Dunbar High School. And then the tall, handsome guy in the back, not you, Krista, no. Tall, handsome guy in the back, that's my husband, Tom. We just celebrated 20 years of marriage. Child. He is 14 years old. He will be a freshman at South Fort Myers High School next year, and he is home because he is quarantined for contact tracing. He is not permitted in the school. Patty, my daughter, I think, has the distinction of being the child who was quarantined the most in Lee County history at 5 times this year. Wow. She is quarantined 5 times. So to say that I understand the shoes that you walk in as parents, I genuinely do understand it. I'm hoping the kids can stay, but if it gets too contentious, I'm going to ask them to leave. So I'm going to dive right in and just ask for questions. And I told Rose and Kathy, my aunts, that they could ask the first one because I know it will be nice.
She doesn't know what it is. I just wanted to ask, because I don't fully understand. You're going to be you're about to be sworn in president of FSBA, right?
Yes.
What does FSBA mean to? What do they do? What do they mean to Lee County? And why is this such a great thing for you and for Lee County?
That is totally a softball.
Yeah.
I can knock that one out of the park, and it'll be gone forever like what? Jack?
Hillary's email.
Like Hillary's email. I know you don't appreciate that joke, but I have to tell it. Yes, I am the incoming president of Florida School Boards Association. I will be sworn in on Thursday. So what I meant to say about my kids is they are 4 of the 95,000 reasons why I do what I do here in Lee County. They are certainly not the only reasons, but they are genuinely my motivation and my heart. And now they will be 4 of the 2.3 million reasons why I do what I do for Florida School Boards Association. I will basically be leading the organization that helps advocate for public education in the state of Florida and make sure that we're providing really good training to produce really good board members across the state. Thank you for that really easy question. And you have your hand up, ma'am.
Yes. I think they can be yes or no answers. They're very quick. There's like 4 questions, very fast. I understand that some of the things have already been removed from the code of conduct. We can
say that one more time.
Are boys allowed to use girls' bathrooms?
Are boys allowed to use girls' bathrooms? No.
Thank you. Are boys allowed to play on girls' sports teams?
Are boys allowed to play on girls' sports teams? As of right now, the answer is still yes. Florida High School Athletic Association has a policy whereby if a student identifies as transgender, they can go to a committee for the Florida High School Athletic Association and appeal to the committee to be permitted to play on a team of a gender that does not match their biological sex. However, the legislature just passed a law that no longer allows that. I'm actually on the Florida High School Athletic Association Board of Directors, so I have the distinct privilege of working through that issue as well. And we are actually meeting today and tomorrow. I expect that it will be discussed, but I couldn't go up to Gainesville because we're doing superintendent search stuff here. I expect that issue will be decided sometime after July when the law takes effect.
Thank you.
You're
One
welcome.
other real quick question, ma'am.
Let me just finish by saying,
Sure. Sorry.
I want to say in the history of that policy, which was enacted long before I've been on the board, I've been on the board for 4 years now, there have been 11 instances in the state of Florida where a student played on a team that did not match his or her biological gender, and the one time a boy played a girl's sport, it was bowling. Okay, just wanted to provide that detail.
Sorry. Are the teacher and faculty still integrating gender identification and sexual orientation into the curriculum?
Gender identification and what? Sexual orientation are not part of our curriculum. They are taught in a biologically, they are taught in a biologically accurate way as part of a comprehensive health education, beginning in grade 5 and going through high school. And every parent in this room has the right to opt their child out of that portion of the curriculum, but it is all just biological science. That's all it is. But I remember when my kids did it in 5th grade, and they were young and uncomfortable with it. They went over to FGCU, and it literally is girls parts, boys parts, how they work together, and cycles, and really, it's just biology.
So it's not what's called age-appropriate sexual orientation on page 86 of this book. If you've
I
read
have
it.
never seen that book before.
I'll give this to you
Tonight, thank you.
One more question.
Can everybody hear her questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Are the pronouns he and she still being on?
My brain in order to be able to approve it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No other questions? All right, see you later. Yes, please.
So the infamous poster that has been hanging in some schools, not all, why it was hung in some, don't know. If that passes as our code of conduct, will those posters go back up in schools?
So it's not going to be part of everybody hear the question about the poster? It will not be part of the code of conduct. Staff has told us that they're gonna go back and they're gonna rework whatever guidance that they provide surrounding this issue. And that will come before the board before it's approved. We're not looking at any more, I believe that poster was politically motivated. I don't have an issue with it being in the student code of conduct. I really don't have an issue because my kids will tell you that I'm the pain in the butt parent that makes them go through that code of conduct with me at the beginning of every school year. Because I have to sign something, look at Jack, he's shaking his head, I make him do it and they hate it. But I have to sign something that says I have reviewed this with my child, and then they have to sign it. So I'm not gonna have them sign something that I haven't been honest about. So I make them go through the code of conduct every year. Now, if they're in 3rd grade, I'm gonna skip the LGBT page because they're not, I don't think they're ready. Although my youngest third grader probably was ready before my oldest, right? Because he's the youngest. So I didn't have a problem with being in the code of conduct. I believe it's a conversation parents should be having with their children. And you get to direct that conversation. That's the key. When it's in the code of conduct, you direct the conversation. If it's a poster hanging in a school, my right as a parent to direct that conversation is gone. And that's where I had an issue. I had an issue with a poster hanging in a school where I can't direct the conversation. My kids will tell you I'm a control freak. Yes?
So based on that, I'm still confused as to how it went from the code of conduct to a poster.
And-
It's my understanding that the school board was presented with the information that was going in the code of conduct, but were you or were you not presented the fact that it was gonna take its own form in a poster?
I did not know it was going to be a poster. That might be my bad for not being prepared, but I don't think it says anywhere in the code of conduct this will be a poster. So I did not know it was going to be a poster. When I found out it was a poster, I started to ask questions, and I asked for a briefing from staff as to actually what exactly is going on surrounding these issues. That briefing was put off because the Parents' Bill of Rights was working its way through the legislature, and they wanted to determine how that would impact what we're doing. Ultimately, we had a workshop on March 22nd. I see my colleague Kathleen Morgan in the back. She can tell you it was a 3-hour workshop. I probably asked 2.5 hours worth of questions because I was really concerned about what we're doing with our kids. I've got kids in the system, and this is a conversation I believe I should be able to direct at home.
Can I
Yes.
piggyback on that? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I wanted to piggyback on that, because the other thing was you said that you don't have an issue with it being in the code of conduct, and you and I have had conversations about that, and I understand that. But the one part that you do have an issue with is the parent consent part, and so if that was part of the poster and part of the code of conduct, how did you wrap your head around the fact that the parental consent piece was part of the code of conduct and or the poster part? Can
The
you talk
parent
about that?
consent piece was not part of the code of conduct.
That's not written in the same verbiage as
No,
that's on
it
the
is,
poster?
we did not approve that as a board. That's considered a best counseling practice, I believe, if I recall correctly what staff said. There, just so you all know what she's talking about, there is a form, there was a form, and I still haven't gotten a really clear answer as to whether this form still exists, although other people in this room have asked the question and gotten a different answer. There was a form that allowed, I usually use my son as an example, but I don't want to embarrass him. So there was a form that allowed a student to walk into school and talk to a principal or a counselor or whatever and say, I'm a biological male, I identify as a female, I want you to refer to me as she and her, and instead of calling me Christopher, I want you to call me Christine. And the student could sign that, and an administrator or a counselor at the school could sign that, and then everybody at school would start treating that biological boy as a girl. Does that make sense? Nowhere on that form
No.
was there a...
No, it doesn't make sense.
Well, no, nowhere on there was a parental signature line.
Right.
And you can ask my husband, when I was reviewing that part of the agenda at home, I was like, oh my gosh, there's nowhere for me to sign this. This is so wrong. I have to be able to sign this. My daughter Patty had her second COVID shot. And she called me the next day from school and said, I have a headache and I'm really achy. And I said, well, do you want me to bring you some Advil, or do you want to come home? And she said, just bring me some Advil. So I called the school, and they said, you can give her the Advil, but you have to physically be present next to her while she consumes it. Otherwise, we need a doctor's note to administer medication. So my daughter can't take Advil, but you can treat her like a boy without my knowledge? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. And I think staff knows pretty well where I stand on that issue. I'm one of 7, but I don't see a lot of support for that at the board table right now either. Are we good?
Yep.
I think you were next, you're after her.
I have a couple things, but so my concern is for a student, or even, faculty for that matter. But for a student who is approached by another student saying, they're biologically, they're a girl, but they're saying they're a boy now. And if that student says, no, you're a girl, how is that gonna be handled in the midst of all of this? Because is that student's rights gonna be protected as much as the others? Are both students gonna have protection of their rights?
Yeah, I don't know, I think that's probably a better question for my kids to answer. I don't know how that happens in the schools. I know that my youngest, who's not here, had a very similar conversation with someone who identified as gender fluid, and he just said, I don't want to talk about this. I don't feel comfortable talking about it. And the student who was gender fluid pushed it, and said, well, you're not going to talk about it with me. That's bullying.
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher came over and intervened and stopped the conversation, and everything was fine from there. So I think to a certain extent, we need to trust the professionalism of our teachers. Will there be circumstances where children treat each other badly over this issue or other issues? 100%, absolutely, and we have processes in place to deal with that.
Because I guess that, in hearing what I've been hearing over the last couple months, my concern is not all students are being protected at the same level. You want to say that they are, but it really is not coming across that way. That, just a certain group is really getting that extra protection. And that kind of brings me to my second point of, why is there a critical support guide in the works if you have a code of conduct that should encompass all of that? Why would you need a separate document to go to staff on how to guide them in these areas? I just don't, that doesn't, and I'm a former high school teacher from another state, and I've taught on the high school level, I've coached on the college level, so I've worked with a lot of teens over the years, and it just doesn't make sense to me that you would have a code of conduct, but then you're gonna add this other document, and are parents gonna see it? Are they gonna know what the influence of that document is in addition to the code of conduct? And, are students gonna be made aware of it? And where do the students' rights really fall? And I think parents, you need to know that your students have a way to, if they feel like they're not getting their rights heard, they're in the student code of conduct, there's, I was looking at this today, or last night, there's a discrimination grievance policy that students have access to, that they can go through that policy. Because I think you're gonna see a lot of, depending on how this thing goes, a lot of students going this route, to file grievances.
So there are so many questions
Yeah,
there.
there is.
I don't remember them all. And I'm not being sarcastic.
Yeah, no, I know,
really
there
a
was,
lot in there.
yeah.
I'm gonna come back to trusting the professionalism of teachers. Why do we need a critical, what did I call it?
The critical support guide.
Critical support guide, Because we're not just talking about LGBT issues, we're talking about drug use and alcohol use and all of the things that teenagers get themselves into that they might approach a teacher about, but they don't feel comfortable approaching their own parents about. And if I, as a teacher, if I'm a career changer, I go from being a school board member to a teacher, I know nothing about how to deal with those issues with kids other than my own, and someday they'll be in therapy because I won't deal with it correctly, right? So I need some training on how to deal with these sensitive issues with students, and I believe that's all this is. This isn't about carving out a special
when it was
treatment for any group of students,
when it
but
was
any student with a
first
problem.
introduced, it was said that it was
No,
for,
that's not
then
what
the
I recall.
superintendent, no, it was, because I heard it. He said, the gentleman who was presenting it said it was for, kinda in place of the poster.
Right, to
And-
include all students.
Well, he said for LGBTQ, and then the superintendent later said it would be for all students.
Right. And that
So,
was-
you're hearing two different things,
Well, I know,
so,
but the superintendent is the one who's in charge, not Mr.
for the
Bradley.
time being.
Yeah, not Mr. Bradley, so that's
Right.
why that's stuck in my head,
Yeah.
because he's the chief executive officer, and anything that comes out to us has to go through him, so.
Okay.
Well, I wanna get to somebody
okay.
else.
I was next, actually.
You were next, sorry, my bad.
Okay. So, I'm Denise Nystrom, was a former special education teacher, director of special services, assistant superintendent for personnel. I mean, I just have to say I'm in shock. I have now sent 3 letters to all of the board members, not one person has called me to set up a meeting, not one, okay? And I have been asking the same questions that these people are asking about boys and girls bathrooms and boys on girls sports teams and so on. So the first thing I want to just say is, if the transparency was there, people would not be that upset. But I think that there are underhanded things that are going on, my opinion.
Is there a question?
I have a few questions, but I'm going to make a few statements.
Okay, this is a
Okay, I
town
need
hall
to
where
know,
I'm
I
taking
need to know
questions and
if
answering
Title IX
questions.
is driving the specific words being in the code of conduct.
Okay, I'll take that question, and I'll go back and I'll
Well,
come back to you.
a lot of people ask a few questions, and I have a few questions.
Is Title IX driving what? Is Title IX driving what?
Is Title IX driving the phraseology that we are finding in the code of conduct?
What phraseology?
Gender identification, gender expression, sexual
I
orientation.
don't think Title IX is driving it. I think it's the United States Supreme Court interpretation of Title VII that's being applied to Title IX that's driving a lot of the language that we're seeing. And to be honest with you, not to be honest with you, just to tell you the facts, the 11th Circuit, which is the intermediate appellate court that is dispositive in this area of the country, has ruled that
No, they
we
don't rule.
have to.
They're not rulers. They opined. Come on, let's be real here.
Has
We're a law school
ruled
graduate.
that we have to, if a student comes to us who is transgender, has been diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and wants to use the bathroom that does not match their biological sex, we have to allow that student to use the bathroom of their choice.
No.
That is what
No.
the United States Appellate Court for the 11th Circuit has told us legally we have to do.
No.
Now, has it been ruled on by the United States Supreme Court yet? No. Are there ways that I believe we as a school district can work through that within the confines of the law as the opinion came down from the 11th Circuit? Yes, I absolutely believe that there are ways that we can do that. When we had the best practices guide out there, that's all it was. It was a best practices guide. There has never been an instance in Lee County where a biological boy is using a girl's bathroom or a girl's locker room, and there has never been an instance in Lee County where a biological boy is using a girl's bathroom or a girl's locker room. And I have been promised that that will not happen in Lee County. I have been told that will not happen. I feel comfortable sending my kids to school every day knowing that they will not have to expose themselves to or be exposed to the parts of an opposite gender. Am I making sense so far?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the law is the law. And a lot of people say, well, just pass a full penny sales tax and that will make up for all the federal funds you'll lose. No, it won't. And our federal funds are spent on our most vulnerable children. These are our ESE, help me. That's all right.
Social emotional.
No, it's not social emotional. It's our are students with disabilities. That our federal funds are used to pay for programs to help students with disabilities, whether they be minor disabilities or they be major disabilities. That money is also used to pay for our community eligibility program, where 86% of the students that attend traditional public schools in Lee County, not charters, traditional public schools in Lee County qualify for free or reduced lunch, which makes us a community that's eligible for free or reduced lunch at every school. So we've got kids, 86% of whom can't afford to eat unless they go to school and get breakfast and lunch. That program is in jeopardy if we don't follow the law. So there are serious concerns with not following the law. I want you to understand that I have a responsibility to you to protect taxpayer dollars, and if we're sued because we don't allow a transgender student to use the bathroom or locker room of their choice, this room will be filled with people who are angry at me about that. So I want you to understand, this isn't a liberal school board that woke up one day and decided girls should use boys' bathrooms. This is the law of the land right now in Lee County.
Okay, so I am not a contentious person. Anybody that knows,
You know what, I have to tell you,
anybody
one of
that,
the
excuse
reasons
me,
that I
excuse
didn't-
me, anybody
one of
that,
the reasons-
can I speak?
Yeah, one of the reasons I haven't answered your emails is because they're really mean.
You know, you're very, demeaning to the people that sit near you.
Okay, what's your question?
Thank you. And I'm just saying, so, you
What's your
know,
question, please?
okay, so I
Denise,
am,
what's your question?
excuse me, can I get it out?
Please.
Okay, but I'm going to say it my way.
Okay.
So anybody that knows me
Would
knows.
you like the microphone?
No, I don't need the microphone, they can hear me.
Come on, we've got a lot of people with questions, come on.
So, anybody that knows me knows I'm not a contentious person. But there was an incident in pre-K where the teacher did a whole family thing, and she taught the students about women and women having children, men and men having children. Why are we doing this on the pre-K level?
First I've heard about this.
Well, that's
If you could bring
shocking.
me the teacher and the school, I'll certainly refer to
Are you going to
superintendent
have a
for follow-up.
form where parents are going to be able to know what SB 582 stands for 2006, 2012, and they can automatically opt out? Or are we gonna wait and something's gonna happen, and then the parent's gonna realize it, and then they have to try to opt out?
I believe that parents are sent a form, grades 5 through 8, to opt out, and then in high school, parents have to actively opt their child out.
Please send
Can
me
you
those
explain
forms.
that so everyone understands what you mean? Because I don't know what that means.
Is there a reason?
Well, I'm saying, with all the new laws, SB 582, 2006, where you can't ask for vaccinations, but you have trucks showing up to give vaccinations at Three Oaks School, and you have 2012, so there's equity in sports. The parents, what they should have in that code of conduct is that information, so that parents know what is going on in the schools and they can make decisions for themselves.
I'm sorry.
Are you going to do
We
that?
can't include in a code of conduct that we approve tomorrow, law that doesn't become
Then don't
effective
approve it
until.
tomorrow. Everybody should wait until July.
Law that doesn't become effective until July.
You've got 2 weeks.
Okay, well, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, right, and why not?
We'll do it next year.
And why not? Next year, after they've already spent a year doing what
Next
they've done.
question, please. Yes.
So just help me understand this a little bit. I'm a parent of 2, and they're in the public school district. And so you said that it's the law that technically a transgender student should be able to use whatever restroom they want. However, you said that no, in our schools, they cannot. So it's kind of a trendy thing right now. There's all sorts of, like, celebrities and stars that the younger kids follow that are talking about this
Can everybody hear her?
and being fluid with everything. I have
Ourselves, and then there are other steps we have to take. Again, if you read the dissent, it is pretty much a roadmap for what we need to do with that policy in order to keep the genders separated in bathrooms and other
keep
intimate
everybody
facilities
happy.
in schools.
So we're not gonna have this where we're kind of feeling like, oh, we feel better after hearing from you and talking, and then all of a sudden tomorrow night, we're all gonna be like, what?
Yeah, no, I'm
Is that
telling
gonna
you,
happen?
if this was happening with my own kids, I would be freaking out. I would be, if my kids were put in a situation where they were using bathrooms or locker rooms or both with members of the opposite sex, I would be freaking out. I don't want that. So I don't know what to tell you other than that. I am confident that that is not happening in Lee County, and I'm confident that's not going to happen in Lee County anytime soon. Yes.
Have there been conversations
or do you know of any plans to require vaccines at the beginning of the school year?
Absolutely not, we don't have the ability
And
to
if
require
not,
vaccines.
or proof of? And if
No.
not, will you
No,
be
we
requiring
don't.
masks?
No, we don't have the ability, that's a state decision.
Mm-hmm.
Any vaccination requirements that are implemented by the schools come from state law and state requirements, we can't do that. And we are not requiring masks, beginning next school year.
Go Governor
fact, beginning-
DeSantis.
June 28th, we're not
Hallelujah.
requiring masks.
Go Ron.
Mr. Simon?
Can you give us an update on the superintendent search?
Thank you.
And where we're going from here, and how the public can play a role in participating in that?
Absolutely. Update on the superintendent search. We had an interview today with 2 candidates for an interim superintendent search. I do have a colleague in the room, so I'm not gonna really offer an opinion, but they were good interviews. They're very, very experienced, somewhat dynamic, definitely people who I think can keep the district running for the next 6 to 9 months while we enter into a full national search for a permanent superintendent. And that will, the search for the permanent superintendent will involve all kinds of opportunities for public involvement in the process. What does the community want in the next superintendent? What kinds of qualifications are you looking for? We'll be reaching out to the business community, we'll be reaching out to students, we'll be reaching out to parents, we'll be reaching out to all stakeholders. And the search firm will help us set those things up and set the parameters surrounding the committees that we'll put together. Beyond that, I can't give you a ton of detail because we don't choose the search committee until June 21st. So I can't tell you exactly what the process is gonna look like, but it will involve all of that. As a matter of fact, one of the very first things I believe the board will do as part of this process is review our vision and mission statements, our values, our strategic plan, and the superintendent's job description to make sure all 7 of us are on the same page with regard to what candidate we want to come in and lead the district forward permanently. Yes?
Is Angela Pruitt one of the candidates?
Former Mayor Ribble. Go ahead.
Is she one of the candidates, Angela?
Angela Pruitt was not approved by the board as one of the finalists for the interim.
Okay. Can she apply to be the?
She can.
Okay.
She can Dr. Pruitt apply to be the permanent? Yes, she can. Anybody can apply to be the permanent. The board did ask that if you apply and you get the position of interim superintendent, that you not apply for permanent, because we really want, we really don't want to limit the application pool for the permanent superintendent. Lots of times if you have an internal candidate serving as the interim, people on the outside will look at that and say, oh, they're the heir apparent, so to speak, and it will deter good candidates from applying. So we really didn't want to do that. We really wanted to make sure that good people applied across the board. We made it clear that the interim is just the interim. It is a 6 to 9 month position, and after that, we will hire somebody permanent to come in and lead the district. So, but we can't keep people from applying, even if they get the interim position. Yes.
I'll let her.
Yes.
She was before me.
Yes.
The question I had, I'm looking for the superintendent. I'm a retired from the school district. I was an assistant supervisor in transportation. And back
I'm
then.
sorry. She was an assistant supervisor in transportation.
Yeah. Sorry. But one of the things, I was back during the Browder years when he was superintendent. Before him, there was someone that was selected that they spent, thousands of dollars to go all over the country, and they got somebody that literally didn't even last, I don't know how long.
Dr. Burke.
Yeah, and before they found a local guy, that understood, because we're such a critical area with, desegregation and with school choice, and to try to get somebody from a northern state and to understand our infrastructure, and nobody's ever asked transportation for input. That was one of the things I always was, I said, that's one of your biggest budget items, and these people understand, the routing and understand, how to fill a bus and why kids are on the bus for 2.5 hours. And I mean, there's so many critical things that they never ask for their input when it comes to, looking for superintendents. So I just thought I'd throw that out there.
I appreciate that. So if you didn't hear, Lee County is a very, very unique school district. I do have a lot of access to my colleagues across the state, and there is something about Lee County and the Lee County School District and the Lee County School Board that is unique and perhaps more dramatic than it has to be on many occasions. And we are, was that artfully said? We were the very last school district in the nation to desegregate, and we desegregated by court order, and out of that, we got our system of school choice, and a lot of people don't understand why we have that system of school choice in place and why it's a good thing. And so you're right, there are a lot of things that are unique about Lee County, and would an internal candidate who understands the entire community be better? Perhaps, but I believe this community needs a national search. I believe that the majority of the people with whom I have spoken and the outcry I have heard, they want a national search. They want to see what's out there, and they want to know that we have reached out into every corner of the earth to try to find the best person. And you know, there's a lot of talk out there about the fact that we have a very contentious school board right now, and we do have a very contentious school board right now, but we also have a very, very, very attractive school district. We are on the cusp of becoming an A school district. We are on the cusp of becoming an A. That's a big deal. We have 0 schools in the school district of Lee County that are rated a D or an F, or graded a D or an F by the state of Florida. By comparison, Hillsborough County has 27. I mean, 27 versus 0. We have 95,000 students. We're the 9th largest school district in the state of Florida, 32nd largest school district in the nation. It requires an ego to apply for a superintendent position, especially in a district of this size. And an ego is going to want to run the 32nd largest school district in the nation, and they're going to look at the board and say, I can handle that. And boards change. Boards change with each election, boards change. So I don't think the board is a reason that somebody will not apply. I think there are a lot of really good reasons
Did you
why
ask
good people
President
will
Trump
apply.
yet?
When you started talking about the grading system of Lee County, that was another issue that I had, because I feel like a lot of the referrals and things that are, attributed from either the bus or from teachers, they're downgraded because certain, like if it's a fight, it would be downgraded to something else because it would go to Tallahassee, it could result in a lower grade. So I'm afraid that a lot of times we're compromising things because of that grade, and we're saying that, we're gonna allow this in the school because we want that higher grade. And that was always a big issue with me, especially with drivers. We had a fight, kids, high school kids. And it was written up as a fight, and when I would go into the meeting with the parents, and I saw that it was downgraded by the principal, to an altercation. Like it was just, they were yelling at each other, when this was a fist fight. And I'm just saying that those are some of the issues that
I hear you.
And it could go beyond just fighting, it could be with any issue, worried about the grade, and so we're gonna compromise.
So the question surrounds compromising in terms of reports of student behavior in schools. Like a fight would be downgraded to what did you say?
Like an altercation.
An altercation. So I will tell you that was a concern of mine as well. Each of the 7 board members have their own specific part of the strategic plan that each of us is supposed to focus on. Mine is safety and security. Obviously, after Stoneman Douglas, everything surrounding safety and security blew up. And I have been privy to the spreadsheet that we use to make sure that exactly what you just said is not happening. So I understand you were in the district a while ago. I can tell you I'm very confident that that is no longer happening. I do think we have much better behavioral systems in place for our kids, to include restorative practices is being scaled up, and we're using that more and more often to help students change their behavior instead of just punishing the behavior. So that has definitely changed. I'm confident that if a kid fights, it's listed as a fight and it's reported to the state as the same. At the same time, and I'm going to knock on wood here because the grand jury, I believe, is still convened. The governor convened a grand jury to look into exactly what you're talking about. Are school districts appropriately reporting incidents that occur in schools? And you've all seen, Runcie from Broward was arrested, as was the attorney in Broward for covering up information. I don't know if it was exactly that information, but that was the purpose of the grand jury. And I can't know whether our superintendent testified and what he testified about, if at all, because that would be a violation of the law. But I'm confident that whatever information was provided is appropriate information. Tara, and then I'll get to you.
There was somebody else before me, but.
Oh, you, sorry.
I want to commend you on the I guess, the accolades of how the district has performed and the things that you just pointed out. And I guess I think that hopefully the leadership can stick to that idea when we keep hearing these agendas of, 22 other districts are using this flyer and this code of conduct. Like, let's not be like these other districts. But speaking further along that same, my question is, in the future, as I'm sure it's going to end up getting pushed and it's growing and it'll come before you, will you vote to support some of these race-based theories? Obviously, there's programs out, let's specifically target the African American community, and obviously the extreme of that is now the critical race theory. But are you, from a leadership standpoint, I want to put in that context because I think people might take that out of context.
I don't really know what critical race theory is, to be honest with you. When I first
Nobody does.
When I first engaged in the conversation on LGBT, I didn't understand that issue either, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't think I fully understand it yet either. I have done some research into what it is. It doesn't appear to be based on researched and scientifically proven pedagogy. It doesn't appear to be something that would be supported by education professionals who understand how curriculum should be drafted and written and presented to students. It seems to be more of a theory that might be appropriate at the college level, but it doesn't appear to be based in science and genetics. So my initial reaction is no, I would not support that. But I need people who know a lot more about education than I do to help me to understand it before I can tell you that for sure.
So
I don't want to give you an answer.
No,
without really understanding the
I get it.
underlying concept.
You just heard a guy presenting a program that was sponsored by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and it was specifically to target African American younger students for these special things, meaning, we need special programs to bring them ahead, or to, there might be some really smart kids there that we can have in these advanced classes. Like you just heard, I remember the guy came to the meeting and specifically spoke to you. I know that part of it was a little offensive.
It's two different guys. The guy you're talking about is to help students who have dropped out of high school come back in and earn their degree. That's the guy you're talking about.
Okay.
The other program that you're talking about is different, and the vendor was not there.
Okay.
I think it's inappropriate for a vendor to address a board member.
Right.
Vendors deal with staff, not with board members. That's when politics gets really bad. So the program you're talking about, I can't remember the exact name of it, but it was, I think, $250,000 expenditure to increase the number of minority students that we have in IB, International Baccalaureate, ACE Cambridge, AP Advanced Placement courses, and things like that. And one of our goals in the strategic plan is to close the achievement gap. And if we don't have programs like that in place, I don't know how we close the achievement gap. The fact that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation sponsors that organization does not mean that the curriculum of International Baccalaureate or ACE or Advanced Placement or any of those courses changes. AP is AP, IB is IB, ACE is ACE. I mean, AP history books lean way left, but it's one source that's used by a teacher in a classroom. So that's not curriculum, that's not content-based. That is simply helping us to identify underserved students so that we can close that achievement gap. It is part of our strategic plan. There was a question out there, yes, sorry.
I kept waiting, thinking somebody might hit this point. I agree with you, the law is the law. The concern that I have, though, is the intersection of, I have 4 children in public school, never get a response to any of my emails. That's beside the point, although it's frustrating. It's the intersection of their freedom to express their religious views in the context that we're discussing with the LGBTQ. Before this was an issue, years ago, my son in the 5th grade had a teacher at Pinewoods Elementary send him home in tears because he dared to suggest that marriage was a man and a woman. And so I'm not so concerned with the peer-to-peer as I am with someone feeling they have the right to express themselves to my child, but my child doesn't have the same right to express himself, and particularly from a religious standpoint. That's the law of the land for some time, and I think maybe that's in a nutshell the concern. But if the law is what it is, I think you are intelligent enough, I think, to figure out a system where it's a disciplinary action, or how we're going to manage that when my son refuses, or another teacher who's religious refuses to look at a little boy or a little girl and cannot in good conscience tell them they're the opposite sex. That's where I see the friction. And the law is what it is. I understand the federal funding, the needs, but we have to have a process to deal with that, where our views as religious, I'm a Christian, and my children are being raised that way. I want them to stand up for what they believe in. And I think that's really the frustration. There's a lack of understanding law, and then there's a lack of understanding what process would be in place. So
I appreciate that, and that is what, can you make a note for me to look into that and get back to you, see me afterwards for your contact? I know I've read your emails, there are
no, I haven't emailed you.
Oh, okay,
These
because
went
there
to-
are not enough hours in the day,
That's
honest to
fine.
God, true, to
No,
respond.
I never emailed to you in all
150
fairness.
to 300 emails a day at the beginning of this, and I haven't even gotten back to the beginning emails.
This
I
is
will
years.
read them all.
This is years. I have
Okay.
high school. This is years.
Well, let me ask
and
you.
I understand. I get it. There's
Well,
a lot of emails.
Let me ask you, have you had a lot of interactions like that with teachers?
So in that instance, my son came home. We were floored. He's not talkative at all. We were floored that he even shared it with us. This is the kid that rode an elephant one day at school and it didn't even make the evening news at our house. But it shocked him. I went immediately to Ms. Gunderson at Pinewoods. We took action, but it was weird, and we never were unkind to this teacher. We had never been anything but nice to her. It really threw us for a loop. But there was no process in place to deal with it. So I felt bad for Ms. Gunderson dealing with an issue that was new. And this was before there was a right for her to express that view. And that's the concern I have. But I'd be happy to share my contact information.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason why I asked the question is because I've got 4 of them, and one teacher, Patty's about to go into the 11th grade. We have had one teacher who has taught politics in class.
Yeah.
And she taught from a perspective that I would tend to agree with,
It's still not.
but it's inappropriate.
Yeah, I agree.
And my husband and I had a recent heated discussion about the need to trust teachers. They are professionals. They are trained. When we're teaching history and we have a teacher who's teaching history from a perspective, that is inappropriate. Academic freedom does not apply to K-12 or pre-K-12 teachers. Academic freedom applies at the university level, the college and the university level. And what happened to that one teacher that was influencing her class? The students got together and sent an email to the principal. The principal spoke to the teacher, and the teacher was gone in 2 weeks. Not because she was fired, but because she could no longer teach the way she wanted to teach. I mean, the kids did it on their own. I wasn't involved in it, I didn't get involved in it, they did it completely on their own, and the problem was taken care of. One teacher out of all of the teachers we've had in the system. So really, the level of professionalism that our teachers exhibit, I think it's important for us to acknowledge that and respect that for the most part. You get bad apples in any profession, for sure, and principals are trained to deal with that. But I think for the most part, we do a good job of sticking to curriculum and sticking to facts and not infusing opinion into what we teach in our classrooms. Yes?
I have 4 things.
Did I miss you?
I'll start with the easy one.
Okay.
Is the board ever going to consider extending the amount of time for public comment during board meetings, or at a bare minimum, prorating the amount of time if, say, for example, 31 people want to speak, and now because of one person, we've gone from 2 minutes to 1 minute. Because it seems to me that although you have a policy, it does tend to fly in the face of our ability to be able to communicate effectively, not just directly with the board, but in a public forum so that other people can hear the concerns and questions that we might also have. That's
So,
number 1.
have any of you been to a school board meeting before?
Yes.
So are you familiar with our public comment policy? If you have fewer than 20 speakers, I think everybody gets 3 minutes. If you're over 30, you get 2 minutes, and if you're over 60, you get 1 minute, and there's only 60 speakers, I think.
30 is the cap.
30 is over, once you hit 31,
Once
it's
you get
60.
over 30, it's 1 minute each. I would not support changing that policy, because I will tell you, sitting at that dais, if we're there for too long, it becomes counterproductive to the decision-making process. I am exhausted as I stand in front of you right now, because I've been at the board table since 9 o'clock this morning. So I don't think that I could do my job very well and process the information that's coming at me in a way that's effective for the people that I represent if the meetings go any longer than they go right now. So I would not support changing that policy on 1 of 7. I'll give you a second question, then I'm gonna go back there, then I'm gonna come back. Go ahead.
If I may, I want to follow up on that one.
Yep.
In addition to the other one. My concern is though, if we have a meeting like tomorrow night, where we're dealing with both the superintendent selection and the code of conduct, and we have a bunch of people coming in and we're limited to 1 minute, how can we effectively get adequate information to the board? Because the truth of the matter is, it's not just for the board to hear, it's for the community to hear. And we can't get that information out in 1 minute. So that's where my concern is with that. Second thing, and then I'll come back to it. How do you reconcile the fact that school board policy 1.181 dealing with the emergency protective gear mandate has actually been identified by your board attorney as having the mask mandate portion expired, yet for some reason your board attorney and the school district seems to think that an MOU and a bargaining agreement with the union trumps the rights of the students when they're not even party to that agreement. And can you give us any assurances that you will not be condoning any kind of bargaining agreement or MOU that locks in an entire group of individuals that aren't party to that agreement for an entire year without properly revisiting that agreement as circumstances change?
Wow, that was a really long question. I'm not sure I can answer the whole thing. I can tell you that masks will be voluntary beginning next school year.
Until another situation comes up.
How many times in your life have you had a global pandemic that I don't anticipate this happening again, is my point. I can't speak to the legality of it. I mean, honestly, I'm true, I have a lot of agreeing, and she wrote a memo, and I've read it 17 times, and I don't really understand it. We do have an MOU with our Teachers Association of Lee County and the Support Personnel Association of Lee County, and you said the word union like it was acid on your tongue.
Yeah.
Unions used to be like acid on my tongue too when I lived in New York. They had complete and total control over the education system in New York, and then I moved to Florida. One of the reasons I moved to Florida is it's a right to work state. When I went to the union in New York, it was marble floors and wrought iron gates. When I made my first visit to the union here in Florida, it was a converted garage, and I sat on chairs like this with ripped vinyl. It's a completely different animal down here. 53% of the union members in Lee County are registered Republicans. When I interviewed with the union for this campaign,
That doesn't mean anything, Chris.
when I interviewed with the union for this campaign, I was, one of the 6 people on the panel was a member of the Republican caucus of the FEA. The FEA is the Florida Education Association, which is the state teachers union. Did you know that a Republican caucus existed within a union anywhere in the world? I didn't know that that existed in a union anywhere in the world. The teachers are the teachers union is the collective voice of the teachers in Lee County. We entered into an MOU with them. I watched every minute of collective bargaining. It was fascinating to watch it. It's never been recorded before. I watched every minute of collective bargaining. We have an interest-based bargaining system here in Lee County, and the administration agreed and the teachers agreed that the safest way to return to school was with certain safety measures in place. The administration agreed to it, the teachers agreed to it, and the union agreed to it. I don't go back on my word. I agreed that these are the safety measures we would put in place. Students have rights, there's no doubt about it, but we have 13,000 employees. We have 13,000 employees, many of whom don't feel comfortable going back into a classroom right now without a mask on because we haven't reached a level of vaccination that makes them feel comfortable. Do you want teachers in classrooms? I do. So my other consideration is not just the rights of students, but actually staffing our schools.
I understand.
It is not just about kids. I have a responsibility to the 13,000 people that work for the school district of Lee County.
I understand that. My question is, why bother even having policy 1.181, which allows for the expiration of the mask mandate, if there's an existing MOU that makes it a moot issue in the first place?
I'm not gonna answer a legal question. I can't
But
answer a
I'm just
legal
saying,
question. I'm
but
qualified
that's
to answer a
something
legal question.
that's something that needs to be addressed on the
Okay.
negotiation table.
We'll get
And
to
what
it.
I'm asking is, as a board member, since you're involved in that process and you oversee it, can you assure us that any future MOUs or bargaining agreements will have a mechanism for the district to force them back? And it says so in there, they will revisit it if there are changing circumstances. Why isn't the district going back and forcing the change in the circumstances?
I could never have imagined that there would be a pandemic. I could never have imagined that we would be
That's
where we are
irrelevant.
right now. I could never in a million years have imagined that we would have lived the year that we just lived.
But that MOU
So I am promising you
agreement-
absolutely nothing because I don't have any idea what next year brings or what tomorrow brings.
Well, if you would
Yes.
circle back to me for the other two,
I will.
I'd appreciate it.
Let me go back and I'll come to you. Was there somebody behind you? Yes, please.
I'm gonna make a statement.
Okay.
I'm a grandmother.
Congratulations, I understand it's the greatest joy on earth.
11 times, and I raised 3 kids in the Lee County public school system, in the IB program. And I'm very concerned, I have 2 grandchildren, and I'm thinking, how do I get them out of the public school system?
That's right.
I'm a Christian, I'm conservative, and I'm learning from students that they're suppressed if they have my values. And I don't like that. And I wanna know what you're doing as a school board to support the kids that have those values. They have a right to express themselves.
Amen.
You're letting LGBTQ give them all these rights and all this expression, they're invited to school board meetings. What about Christians? I mean, my granddaughter said she's not allowed to talk about God. What? I'm sorry, but God's the creator of everyone in this room. So what I want to know, because I was given an award by the Lee County school system, I'm in shock. I'm in shock at what's happening. Granted, it was years ago, but we talk about education. I'm shocked that we're discussing sex. For kids, elementary school children, they're innocent. They shouldn't be thinking about sex.
Amen.
That's not fair for you to put.
I want to share something.
Mental judgment on
One
the
thing I am going to make a statement, I'm sorry. I went on a field trip years ago with a 2nd grade class, and you know, I talk to teachers too that have my values that are afraid to express their values. Okay? So I went on a field trip, cycles in the sand. I don't even know if they still have that. But a little 2nd grade daughter, a little girl sitting in front of me, because I was always the chaperone, she was asked, the whole group was asked, so which came first, the chicken or the egg? And this is years ago, and this is when my eyes were first opened. And this little girl sitting in front of me was raising her hand, she was so excited. She knew the answer, and she said, the chicken, because God created it. And she was told she was wrong. And that was a Lee County field trip. What I'm saying is, what are you doing with the teachers to tell them they better support all values? You know, not just LGBT, but you have a right to believe there's a God, and He was created you, and He created you the way you are.
So my kids can push back at me if they want. Are you guys given a hard time by your teachers for your beliefs, or are you given more of a hard time by your friends for your beliefs?
Other students.
Other students.
Because they can't
Listen,
find their
what
opinions, but that shouldn't be allowed. That's bullying.
Listen, the world is not a place where anybody can walk without their feelings being hurt. I mean, kids.
Okay, good.
Kids
Goes
are
both
going
ways.
to disagree with each other. My point is, when people disagree with them about their conservative beliefs, are you relatively conservative? They are relatively conservative kids. When people disagree with them, it's not the teachers that are disagreeing with them, it's their fellow students that are disagreeing with them. And I think that's a beautiful thing. At their ages, 15
discourse.
and 17, they should be having those discussions. Did you have teachers who pushed back on you in middle and elementary schools about your beliefs? We've got to trust the professionalism of our teachers. Do they make mistakes sometimes? Do we have teachers here and there with agendas? Absolutely no doubt about it. And there's one more thing I'm going to say to you that you're not going to like. And a lot of people in here are not going to like it. In my opinion, religion has no place in law.
But it's your values, it's your
Understand,
views.
religion has no place in education.
You can't
Law-
separate yourself from it.
Law and policy are about, providing order in society. That's it. I cannot allow my morality to creep into the policies that I pass because my morality.
That's what you're doing.
Wow.
My morality might be different from yours and it might be different from yours. I cannot use my position as a school board member to impose my morality through policy on this community.
I agree.
On the other hand, I can use policy, not use policy, but I can implement and enact policy that creates order in our schools. And that's why I have such an issue with the bathroom use policy, because to me that's chaos. In my brain, that's chaos. If you have biological boys using girls' bathrooms or vice versa, that's chaos. That's not social order. So that doesn't fit in with my approach to policy making. I'm just telling you, that's my fundamental belief. I understand that there's a lot of religious opinions surrounding all of this on all different sides. For me, religion doesn't enter into it.
That's healthy, but what I'm getting at is a student has the right to express their values and their views just like anybody else, and that's healthy.
Yes,
It's
I
healthy
agree.
for you to hear both sides,
I
but you
agree.
can't suppress one.
I agree with that 100%.
The teachers need to
In
know.
in my experience, my kids are getting pushed back from their contemporaries, not from the teachers. If a circumstance comes to my attention where a teacher is giving a student a hard time about their political beliefs, their religious beliefs, their any beliefs, that kid absolutely has a right to, appropriately express what they believe in a classroom without pushback from the teacher. Again, this is pre-K-12. This is not college university. So if you've got a teacher who's making a kid feel bad about the way they feel or their religion or their beliefs, I want you to bring that to my attention because that's not acceptable.
You're leaving. You're leaving the school.
I do have tons of emails.
How do we do that?
Yes. Have I called on you yet?
At the very beginning.
Okay.
So
I'll come
I
left
teach
next.
4th grade.
By the way, at 7 o'clock, we have a half hour left.
I'll talk real fast. I teach 4th grade at 3 Oaks Elementary School, and it's been a fascinating year this year
You look
because,
so familiar.
yes, you and I have talked a
Yes,
little
we
bit.
have.
And it's been fascinating this year because when kids are given a reason why they can or cannot do something, they can follow the rule and meet the expectation. Why do I need to wear my mask? And they sit there in their little mask for 6 hours a day. Why do I need to wear my mask? Well, we're trying to protect each other from COVID. They had a reason why. Why do I have to sit in this desk in this room 6 feet away from my friends? Well, because we have COVID and we're trying to keep us all safe and healthy. The reason why behind anything with kids is so important. And if we do not understand it as a school district, anywhere, wherever we're at in the nation, if we don't have a solid reason why we are telling kids to do or not do something, we have nothing. It's pointless. They see straight through us. So maybe that's our problem. And if we're not basing it on religion, as we're going to call it, we don't have a reason why. The Bible is our reason why. It's been our reason why in the United States of America for hundreds of years now.
Inception.
And if we don't, kids, now I'm going to stand up and, well, I can't say that. Let me word this correctly. If we do not help kids understand that there is truly a right and wrong and why it is right and wrong, then we're fighting a losing battle.
Amen.
And we're going to have these same conversations and they're going to get more passionate and more, whatever the word you all said at the beginning, heated or whatever, because we don't have a reason why. And so you can't take what we are founded on away from the kids of our school system and wash it over with whatever the world says is popular right now, because kids are going to see straight through it and they're going to ride that wave and wash up on a shore and not understand how they got there.
Stony Brook Family Day.
Yes, ma'am.
That's where I met you. So I hear you, but.
All that said, and that's what she was thinking about.
And we can't teach religion.
I get that. I understand that.
We can teach religion from a historical perspective.
Absolutely.
But we cannot teach religious principles. That's a law.
But I understand that.
You're looking at 15 years of Catholic school because my parents wanted me to be learning religious principles in school.
I understand that, and you know, the whole thing is, you're a Christian, just go take your kids to a Christian school. I don't wanna do that. My passion is public school. I want my children's passion to be the world that's around them is what their passion should be.
I can't break the law there any more than I break the law.
No,
LGBT.
but what I'm
I
saying
can't do it.
is exactly her point, though. We don't have a reason why anymore, and we're being swayed to and fro whichever way the wind blows, and throwing up posters of this because that's what's popular now, and throwing up posters of that. We need a solid foundation, period.
Right.
So we should only allow Christians in the public schools?
No,
Well,
absolutely
you said it's
not.
all based upon the Bible.
That's not what you
That's
said.
what you said.
No.
No, because if you look at what our country
Kevin
is founded
Sapides
on.
is next. Hi, Mike.
All right, little quick story.
By the way, Kevin owns the AMCO
Oh, don't say that.
down in Bonita Springs. He has been fixing our car since the day we moved here. He's very ethical. He's not a donor to my campaign. There is no way I would ever bring my car anywhere else for any kind of camping service. AMCO Bonita
You didn't
Springs.
bring anything to parents.
Kevin is your man.
Okay, how do I preface this? So, I'm 52 years old, I have two daughters that are product of the Lee County education system, both college grads doing great in life. By marriage, I have a 15-year-old in the house now. Quick personal story, and I'll preface this so you guys know this is referencing Moria County, not Lee. She's got a very good friend of hers that's going to counseling because of the pressure that we're hearing more coming from students than faculty, staff, teachers, and all that. The nice lady was kind enough to share with us, because this was a dear friend of, this young lady in our house. She's had four new kids in her counseling because of all this LGBTQ and all these things going on. What we are in the middle of right now is a cultural war. The field of play has been defined by a force that runs against and contrarian to our conservative or Christian values. They're expecting this war to be fought in the boardroom more than the living room, because they know in the living room it doesn't stand a chance. So in our living room, when a young lady comes home and has these discussions that she's seeing all this going on in her school and she's getting all these pressure, again, Carter County, I'm sure it's not absent in Lee County. Our battleground is in the living room, and that's where it has to be. And the general consensus is we should want education for our kids at the highest level with the least amount of distractions. Right now, they're so damn distracted that their little malleable minds are just running crazy. We're their north and south poles. So that's the thing that we have to take into consideration. All these other matters that we talked about tonight, how do we funnel that passion into results? And it's truly, in my opinion, I think I want to put more pressure on myself as a parent and things like that to make sure my kids are prepared to handle the why. They're prepared to handle, okay, you got a teacher doing that? Well, I got a right to have a discussion with the teacher, don't I? And things like that. So that's where we're our first wall of defense and advocate for our kids. Because by the time they're grown up and they're out, man, they just know what they know, and now life's just going to hit them. So we're their first foundation that's there. So I think we've been pitted in this cultural war where they want us to fight a battle in the boardroom that shouldn't exist in a boardroom. It's got to exist in our living room first. Then if our kids can go to school with that, we ground them every time they come back. No, there's no question, make that statement. So I just want to make sure if I had a question in there, it would just be on the school board, could you do the best job that you could to make sure that you push back on these things with whatever legal arm there is. I understand you can't make law, okay, but I understand also that it's based on interpretation and things like that. That we can help sway the culture in the schools. This will pass, guys. This battleground. This will pass. But in the meantime, just do the best that we can to have some stopgap measure that stops this culture of people that feel they can attack Christian values and things like that. That's it. You can't tell someone not to talk about something or things like that.
Yeah, Kevin, yes, I will definitely push back, but my pushback today is far less venomous than it was 4 years ago, right? Like, I've got 13,000 people that work for the school district of Lee County, and if a staff member comes forward with an LGBT poster and I attack him publicly, he's a professional.
Yep, no
and
attack
I need to
needed.
treat him like a professional.
Exactly.
I've been criticized for the way I questioned him. I wasn't harsh enough, I wasn't mean enough, I didn't go after him hard enough. Well, you know what? He's a professional, and I'm going to treat him like a professional. You might not like the form of questioning, but I'm getting to the heart of it the best way I know how to do that. Again, based on my experience with those 3 kids in the back, I don't want them exposed to that stuff. I
You
want
gotta
to
stand
direct
in
those
the game. I see
conversations.
it. I know.
I want you to direct those conversations. I want everybody in this room to be able to direct those conversations with their kids. That's our right. As Americans, we have a right to raise our children as we see fit. And
That's what I'm
any school
saying.
district policy that gets in the way of my ability to raise my children as I see fit is not a good policy unless I'm going to raise my children by abusing them or committing crimes against them. Then the school district has to step in, obviously. But it is not my job as a school board member to substitute my judgment on issues like LGBT for yours. It is your right to make those decisions for your kids and for you to direct those conversations with your kids. My goal in all of this, Kevin, is to protect every single kid in our schools from bullying, harassment, and intimidation on the basis of any category that
Amen.
they get into, while protecting parents' rights. That's it. Those
I
are my 2
understand that.
goals.
I think
That's
a
it.
fair statement.
Have I been very consistent in those 2 goals? Has that not, I mean, I've talked to Rose and Kathy about this more than I've talked to anybody else about this. Those are my goals, that's it, period. No morality, no religion, no nothing, just the law. And the law is protecting kids and protecting parents' rights. Robert?
So, I perceive that there's a great disconnect between the board and the actual policies being enforced in the school board. And I say that because this poster, page 84, is in a student code of conduct. So it seems to be policy, yet it's referred to as guidance, like it's something different. But it's 1 page out of a policy. I've been to the March 22nd workshop where I think it was Mr. Bradley said that a boy could go in the girls' restroom as long as he was persistent and consistent, and it would be handled on a case-by-case basis in the 119 schools. I've been there when we talked about, is there LGBTQ curriculum? And the answer was no, but the teacher that oversees that curriculum says, no, but there's always a question about LGBTQ, and we always handle it as best we can, always. So there seems to be somewhat of a disconnect. This policy says all students are allowed to access the restrooms that are consistent with their gender identity. There's a disconnect there somewhere.
Okay, so you know my head explodes when you call that a policy and it's not a policy.
But it's in the student code of conduct.
I have to sign it.
Student code of conduct is not a policy.
Okay,
Student code of conduct
but
is,
this is what-
the student
this is
rulemaking
what the
process, I
parents
know, but you don't
Then
get a lot
practice
about
or
this.
procedure.
The actual vocabulary that we use is not, that is a best practices guide. And the reason why that's in there, read that little line again.
Okay, before I read that little line again, if it's on the board, if it's on this wall, and a student goes by and says, okay, this, all students allowed to access the restrooms that are consistent with their gender identity. How do I know as a student that's a policy, guidance, what? This is what I go by.
I hear. All right, so you bring up a lot of different good points. The first one is, students had no idea that policy, or the vast majority of students in Lee County had absolutely no idea that poster was hanging in schools.
But it's in the code of conduct.
Who can say that?
I understand, and the vast
Who
majority
can
of our
say
parents
that?
did not go through the code of conduct with their kids at the beginning of last school year. So they didn't know it was in the code of conduct either. I have to assume that because parents have come out of the woodwork in great amounts of anger, large numbers of anger. I had no idea that was in the code of conduct. I knew it was in the code of conduct. Not because I approved it, but because I went through it page by page with the 3 knuckleheads in the back. So, I mean, I knew it was there. Again, there's a difference between it being in the code of conduct where I can go through it with my kids and I can direct that conversation and having a rainbow sign on a wall. If I see the rainbow sign, I'm uncomfortable. As a blankety-blank-year-old adult, walking into the workplace, I see that poster, I'm uncomfortable. Sexuality has no place in the workforce.
Amen.
Sexuality has no place in schools. And when you hang a rainbow poster on signs, to me that screams, I'm inviting you to discuss sexuality. I think it's inappropriate. That's my view. My view is that it's inappropriate. Most students had no idea it was there. Most students didn't know that it was hanging in schools. So what that tells me is this is an adult issue more than it is a student issue. The vast majority of kids that have come to school board meetings to discuss this issue have said, I had no idea it was there. This is not impacting kids, this is impacting adults.
Oh, no.
And it's impacting adults in the sense that I might not have the ability to dictate that conversation with my kids. It's not, it's an issue for adults on both sides, more than it is an issue for our kids. This specific poster, in this specific code of conduct, if you look at the facts, kids have not been impacted by it. Kids are impacted by conversations that they have with each other in schools, but I don't think they knew that there was a code of conduct pinned.
I know I don't have a lot of time left, so can I ask you to just touch on the potential new school on 3 Oaks?
Yes. Potential new school on 3 Oaks, although that's not a very happy subject for some either. We have a new pre-K through 8 school planned on 3 Oaks, and you can thank Councilwoman Ribble, Councilwoman Ribble, she's on the Council of Estero, for agreeing 7-0 to transmit the comprehensive plan amendment that is needed for us to build that school on 3 Oaks. I'm really excited about the school. It will initially seat around 1,650 students, and I think that ultimately it has capacity for around 2,300 students. We are building the school to capacity of 2,300 students for the media center, the cafeteria, the nurses' office, the gymnasium, all those big areas will be built to the 2,300 capacity. So that when we add on that additional building, we don't have to go through the expense of adding on to those other facilities. What else do you need to know about it? If you look at similar schools across the school district of Lee County, traffic is a big concern. If you drive by Pinewoods in the morning, it's a disaster. If you drive by 3 Oaks Middle at any time in the morning or afternoon, it's a disaster because you have lots of cars on the road and lots of traffic surrounding those schools. 3 Oaks Parkway, where this school will be located, is in a high traffic area. But if you look at other similar schools in the school district of Lee County, you have around 109 spots for cars to snake on the property. Am I making sense? Has anyone ever been parent pick up or drop off? I'm sorry.
So where is this?
3 Oaks Parkway, right next to the post office.
Okay.
So 109 spots at other schools in Lee County. We haven't completed the traffic study yet, but I believe we're already up to 500 plus. I want to give you an exact number because I don't remember the exact number, but we have 500 plus so far spots to snake cars. The goal of the school district of Lee County is to not even have any cars in the turning lane off of 3 Oaks. We want every parent that's there to drop off or pick up their kid on our property, not on 3 Oaks. In addition, we believe we're going to have to put a traffic light in outside, at the exit entry of the school, which will of course improve traffic as well. We are trying to address neighbor concerns. We have some community members who live near the school who are concerned about light, which is not going to be an issue because it's K-8, we don't have outside night events. Concerned about flooding, all of those concerns I believe have been addressed. And what's the other concern? Noise, because the buses are going to be on the side of the school where the community is located, the residential community is located, and we are working very closely with the Village of Estero to address all of those issues to their satisfaction. Thank you for asking that question. I'm really excited about that school. Our kids need it. We are at around 117% capacity for schools that serve Estero students right now, with 3 Oaks Elementary, 3 Oaks Middle, Pinewoods Elementary, we're at around 117% capacity. We need schools for our kids here in the south part of the county. We anticipate opening that school on day 1 full with 1,635 students.
What's the open date? I'm sorry.
Oh, what's the open date? 2023 maybe?
August.
Oh, yeah. August of 2023.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, yes.
A question I'll ask on behalf of parents, grandparents, and taxpayers is this. How can that poster be put in the code of conduct when it's not based on empirical science? There is no way you can change your gender. Why would this ever be put in the schools? You say, okay, religion can't be put into schools, okay. But this is sort of like a religion. It's not based on, it's something you can absolutely prove right there. There's no way you can do it. Years ago, the statistics show that transgender was almost entirely men, adult men, 0.01% of the population. Now we have this mass hysteria of almost entirely girls. The average age of a girl getting a double mastectomy or the hormone treatment is a 16-year-old white girl. Okay, it is all over YouTube, all these influencers. Parents are up against the tsunami. The last thing we need is the school to join into this unempirical, just total nonsense. There is no science behind it. It has no place in school. Absolutely no one wants it, and if the parents don't want it, you need to listen to the parents. The parents want excellent academics. Ask anybody whether they're a recent immigrant or they've been here a while, they don't want this crap in the school.
Okay, so gender dysphoria is a real thing. Scientifically, it is a real thing.
But it's a delusion.
Psychologically.
That poster says
Psychologically.
It's a delusion, or I believe it's a delusion.
Can you change your
It's
gender?
a real medical thing. If you look in the books of medical diagnoses for both physical and mental conditions, gender dysphoria is listed.
Then why are we affirming the delusion?
I, as a school board member, have a responsibility legally to protect and support all children. If a child comes to the school district with a medical diagnosis that requires specific accommodations, I must provide those accommodations
Will
to
we
that
allow
child.
posters?
Otherwise, I will have a room full of parents who are screaming at me for not acting according to the law.
Would we have
That's
posters
it.
saying you can change your race? No, we would not. But this is one delusion.
Oh, where can I sign up?
Equality for all.
Some of that white privilege.
Don't you start.
You're just fine, Don.
My concern is this is a real physical and mental condition.
Mental, not physical.
The problem is
It
they're
is a real
taking sides.
physical and mental condition. If I believe in science, it is a real physical and mental
We
condition.
have no problem.
And I, as a parent, have a right to allowing those forms to be completed without my signature violates my rights as a parent. And hanging the poster in a school doesn't allow me to guide those conversations with my children. I have an issue with the poster. The poster should not have been hung in schools. I like the poster in the code of conduct because it prompts me to talk to my kids about things
it's a
that
lie.
I believe I should be talking to them about at their age. If
Then
you
put
don't
the other
believe you
side.
should talk to
Then
your
put
kid
the
about
other
it,
side in.
if you
Amen.
don't believe you should be talking to your kid about it, you skip that page of the
No,
code of
you
conduct.
put another
everybody's
side
good.
and say marriage is
Rose.
between a man and a woman and there's only two genders.
Rose,
Put the other side.
Is my understanding correct?
Rose.
Is my understanding correct that the posters have all been taken
I
down
don't know,
from
I
all
don't
the
know,
schools?
every single one of them has been taken down, but they have been,
Why?
schools have been told by the district to remove the posters.
Correct. And is my understanding correct that the poster is being removed from the next version of the code of conduct?
It's being revised.
So can we stop
Revised.
beating the dead horse?
Yeah.
It's over. Move on.
People have questions about it, and the school board should answer their questions. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, that's her family.
Do you have a question?
I know.
Oh.
Statement in question. Critical race theory. It's alive and it's well, okay? It's going on. It's a Marxist theology that, number one, primarily is teaching our kids to hate this country. If you're not familiar with critical race theory, don't tell me you can't understand it. It's very simple. I would like to send you Hillsdale's most recent imprimis article on critical race theory. The governor has also been very concerned about this, as we all know. Collier County, today, they stopped the vote on the purchase of their textbooks of $6 million because they got one board member to say, hold off. And the reason that it happened, Chris, is, and I'm not saying, I'm just asking you to please learn about it because it's really important because it's creeping into our textbooks. They stopped it. $6 million they were going to invest in these textbooks that was emphasizing critical race theory. Learn about it because we are in a cultural revolution right now. Whether it's right, wrong, common sense is what we're supposed to be teaching our children, religion or not. We have to get back to the common sense of right and wrong. But I'm gonna ask you, I will send it to you, I'll mail it to you, but I really want you to focus on learning what this is, cause it's getting in our
Yeah,
textbooks.
you can ask my middle kid back there. He was,
Okay.
I called him on my drive here and said, please look up critical race theory and read it to him. And he read it to me from, an article from the American Bar Association. I will look into it, I will learn about it.
Hillsdale
From
College
what I
has an
understand, it's
excellent
a
write-up on
legal
it.
construct. From what I understand, it's a legal construct, and it's not research-based. And we don't teach things in our schools that are not research-based.
Well, you know Governor DeSantis' position on
I
this right now.
absolutely know
But besides Governor
DeSantis'
DeSantis'
position on it, and I also
you know,
know that part of the point of tonight was to get me on record saying, yes, I support her, no, I don't.
Well, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I want you to read what I'm going to say.
I will, I'll send it to you.
Because it's gonna impact your
I mean,
decision on the millions of dollars that you're gonna be spending on these textbooks, that their underlying message, not gonna say critical race theory, but theology is there, that they're gonna be teaching your children about how to hate this country. That's a big issue.
Did I ever get back to you? I never got back to you.
Oh, it's a long time ago, but it's the issue of showing up to the school board meetings, everyone gets a minute. It would be nice if it was just done by lottery. Because I know at different meetings, people feel shut out if they're.
Yeah, I know, and I know that there's some perception that we allow certain people in, and we allow certain people to fill out cards, and we don't allow other people. And I can tell you that what I've learned, because I'm paying attention now, because people are bringing this to my attention, we do escort students in, and those students are there for recognitions, or they're there for acknowledgements, or they're there to read resolutions. We also have to set aside set spots aside for staff, because staff has to be there to provide safety and security, or to answer questions if they come up, or, address the crowd. So we definitely set seats aside, but I'm not aware of any system where we're allowing one side to have more speaking spots than the other side, or any of that. I hear what you're
It's just a matter
saying.
of people
I
showing
like
up
that.
early, and I think if
I like
it's
the line.
loud, that
I
nobody's
like that.
aiming and nobody feels.
I like that.
And then
That might be more fair.
I mean, they get there.
Heck, our student assignment system is based on
There we go.
lottery.
It's a speaker choice.
There you go, yes.
I want to congratulate you on your patience with it.
Thank you.
The tough ladies.
I'm so known for my patience.
The schools, the public school system, they want to separate, they said separate religion from everything. However, they do teach secular humanism, which is a religion. So, the other thing is, when she brought up the critical race, when I was going to go to the podium meeting today, I brought up online a Ken Schultz, it's called How Cultural Marxism Came to Dominate Western Culture. I encourage you to bring it up and read it, it's excellent. And then my question for you was, you mentioned about the school district's rating, and that's nationwide?
No, state of Florida, we can't really, there's no real apples comparison to other states. I mean, we have some tests, but we don't test
Where
every
would
kid.
that information then come?
State of Florida.
Okay.
And I will tell you that last year, the year before the pandemic, last year doesn't really count, the year before the pandemic, the state of Florida was ranked 4th in the nation for education outcomes by Education Week magazine, which is the premier education magazine in the nation. And the reason why that's important is because Education Week is about education, whereas U.S. News and World Report, where Florida is probably ranked way down here, they use per pupil funding as their part of their ranking system. And in Florida, we don't spend that much money on education. I think we're going to be up to around $8,100 per student next year. The state from which I moved, New York, about $19,000 per student. So which school district or which state do you think ranks higher if you take per pupil funding into account in ranking these systems? Education Week does not take that into account. They strictly look at academic outcomes. State of Florida is 4th in the nation. And they were 4th in the nation the year we moved here. And we're about to be an A in that great state of Florida. Makes me so excited. Thank you.
I don't know what an A is, 62%?
Sarah, you can
Or
smile.
is it 95?
The selection process on superintendent, I was very disturbed during the interim superintendent preliminary round, where the board actually ranked who they thought their appropriate people were before even public comment was heard. It bothers me immensely that public comment is being heard what appears to be just show. I mean, you narrowed it down to the top 5 people before you even heard from any of the people that have spent, I think there are 5 of us I know that we spent around about 180 hours combined, perusing not only the resumes and the cover letters, but news articles and everything else. And it concerns me that I haven't heard anybody on the board say that they actually asked whether or not Cartwright, who's one of your 2 that were left, what was she under investigation for? And what's the status of that? We raised that after you guys had already put her as one of the top 5. And other than actually being in that board meeting this morning at 9 o'clock when the vast majority of the people were not able to go, which again is another way of eliminating public comment and public involvement, I would not have been able to have found out from some of the board members what they think is the reason why 3 of the people are no longer there and withdrew themselves. So I would like to know why we're not being informed affirmatively and without having to dig it out from you guys and getting me, well, I heard this and I think that and maybe this kind of response. Why did those 3 people pull out? What were their justifications? What were their reasons? And going back to the same thing, how come the public comment was heard after the fact? And can you assure me that that's not going to happen? Which I know it's not.
assure you, so I'm not gonna promise you anything.
Well, I'd like to know whether or not that's gonna happen with the permanent superintendent or with the decision between these 2, that we're not gonna just be heard after you guys already make the
We've already talked about the process for the permanent. We are going to have committee upon committee upon committee upon committee to help us determine who the next superintendent should be. So you'll have all kinds of opportunities for public comment. What strikes me about the way you asked your question is that I think you believe we're trying to keep stuff from you.
And I do believe
I am not trying to keep anything from you. I am absolutely not trying to keep anything from you. I can't intuit or perceive what your questions, concerns, or thoughts are. I know what my questions, concerns, and thoughts are, and I know that the people in District 3 elected me to ask the questions that I'm going to ask, pursue the concerns that I have, and make decisions based on what I find out about those areas. Do I want your input? 100% I want your input. We are on a short turnaround for the hiring of an interim superintendent. This process was put out there at the very beginning, and we said this is what we're going to do, and we have stuck to the process every step of the way. One of the candidates dropped out because he or she had a bad back and was told by their doctor that they couldn't fly. Another one dropped out for no reason whatsoever, and the third dropped out because he got the job as the interim superintendent in his hometown of Morristown, New Jersey. That's why the 3 dropped out. I'm not trying to hide anything from you. And the accusation that I am, listen, understand that I'm a human being. When I sit at that dais and you come at me in an accusatory way, I'm a human being. I get my back up. I get my back up because I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, I would never hide anything from anybody. That's not who I am. I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant that has 4 kids in our schools, and I'm desperately doing the best that I can do on behalf of the people in this room, and I make no money to do it. I have given up my life to serve you people, and all you do is yell at me at board meetings.
I'm not saying it's
I'm trying to help you to understand what it's like to sit at that dais. And when you come at me with the accusation that I'm trying to hide something, there aren't enough hours in the day for me to communicate to you every piece of information that's in my head on any subject that I know about the school district of Lee County. I can't intuit what you want to know.
Critical race theory has been raised and addressed for well over a couple of years. Why are you only now just trying to learn about it?
Because I'm a bad school board member. Sorry. Go ahead. Last question, by the way.
My question is quick and easy. And I'm glad that you are willing to be transparent with us. Can you tell us the reason why, that if you know of it, why the internal auditors resigned?
Good one.
The letter that the internal auditor sent us indicated that they could not meet the board's expectations. And frankly, the internal auditor did not meet my expectations. If you read the last 2 reports that they sent out, the only part of the report that was personalized was replete with typos and grammatical errors.
What? That's completely
I do
irrelevant.
think I gave them a fair enough shot, yes.
That's not relevant, though.
That was me
Typo.
being nice. Publicly, that was me being nice. The conversations that I had with them behind the scenes were far more harsh than what happened in public. All right, I'll give you, just because you're wearing
so
red.
nice, thank you, Chris.
Last
Honestly,
one.
I appreciate you immensely, but I want to go back to the code of conduct that, Pastor Rhoda brought up. Okay, it's a statement, okay? I was at the meeting where the code of conduct was discussed. It was the second one, the second school board meeting that discussed that. I forget exactly when it was. The question was raised by one of the board members. I don't believe it was you. I believe it was Ms. Giovanelli. Who approved the code of conduct poster going up in the schools? Not one board member, all the way up to Dr. Atkins, who you a little bit ago said he has to approve everything. Not one person could say who approved that to be going up in the schools.
Well, the way I look at that.
That seemed very like weird.
I understand. The way I look at that poster being hung in the schools is I don't approve that poster being hung in the schools. I don't approve French fries being served in the cafeteria. I don't approve, I mean, there's lots of things that occur on a daily basis in the schools. I'm not the operations. I'm the 30,000 foot view school board member
But that's the scary
looking
part,
down.
that this important thing appeared in the schools and no one is taking ownership of
Yeah,
it.
I'm totally taking ownership of it. Totally. You want to blame somebody?
But after the fact.
I'm the person to blame.
No.
If you want somebody to blame, I'm willing to take the blame. What I can tell you is that it has jump-started a conversation in this community that I believe is necessary.
Yeah, because who's in
It's
charge?
unfortunate.
That's the question, who's in charge?
It's unfortunate the way the conversation has taken place. I believe that a lot of mean things have been said and a lot of people in our community have been hurt as a result of the way it's been communicated. But there's a lot of emotion surrounding all of this, and I respect that. And I take that, and totally my fault. The buck stops here, so to speak. But I cannot approve every single thing that's in every single building and every single classroom in the school district of Lee County. That's just not what we do as a board. I was as surprised as you were that they were hanging.
I might be able to shed some light on it.
Oh, but he has not spoken, so.
All right, last one, honestly.
It's an easy question.
I gotta go.
So, the way I see it, there's a few entities, there's kids, there's teachers, and then there's parents. How do you do your job and listen to all of those voices?
How do I listen to somebody voices in my head? Is that what you're asking me?
Right, because you've used your kids as examples, but that's a small sample size, right?
No, I know, and that's a really good question. How do I balance it all? Kids, I care how you feel, I care what you think about, but when you're in our buildings, you have decreased constitutional rights. Parents' rights to raise their children as they see fit trump everything, and I rely heavily on the professionalism and the knowledge and experience of staff when it comes to making decisions, because they are trained and educated in education, I am not. Does that answer your question?
Right, so I think but it's important that the kids get their voices to the parents, so the parents can come to you. And
Yeah, and kids can come to me too. I mean,
Right.
kids come to school board meetings and they talk to us all the time.
So I think what they're asking is there's procedures in place to allow that to occur,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
that's what some people have asked, and I think that's important.
Yeah, and I'm hearing complaints about 1 minute. I mean, over the past 2 months, I mean, even more recently.
No, I'm not talking about the school, I'm just talking about in general.
Oh, yes, absolutely. In general, there's no doubt about that, you know, we can, well, I have an issue with my kids. I tell them, I go to the teacher, I go to the principal. If that doesn't work, I go to the school board. And that's really how it's supposed to work. So, if you all would like to be the best town hall audience ever, and you wanted to pick up your chair and fold it and put it on that stack of chairs back there, you would save my kids some time. Thank you for
Good job.
Good
While we were all sitting in there, and she lied about her answer to me about the vaccine. This is in the Title IV funding. It's the Title IV Part A. This is what they're voting on Tuesday. It's one of the amendments to the grant. And right here, it says to reallocate the contracted nursing budget due to a lack of available nurses
and instead use these funds to seek assistance with 7th grade vaccine verification. They just slide it right in and reallocate majority of these unused funds to support Algebra 1 summer learning. Just like right smack dab in the middle of two totally different things.
Algebra and vaccines.
Yeah.
I'm out in the sun all the time.
So this is the thing I bring up. My kids are biracial. My wife is Italian. So it's like when you talk about, and I mean, technically I'm born biracial too. My mom's German. But it's like, so if I have to go through critical race theory or like these classes and this Marxist idea, well, who am I gonna hate? Like I gotta go home and hate one of my parents now. Right? It doesn't make any sense. Right. And it's absurd. Why was my contact 6 weeks ago? They don't want to make it that way. So in the meeting, it's like literally being presented. And I made a point, like, first and foremost, my kids are white people's charity. I said it in the meeting, my kids are not white people's charity. But if we're going to do something, we'll have to low income neighborhoods. That includes all kinds of kids, black. I grew up poor, and most of my friends are white. Not here, but I'm an educator, and I have 3 grandkids. I have 3 kids and 8 grandkids. My grandmother is 11 years old. From prettier areas are taking 7 years. The North Fort Myers area, like Trailer Park.
I wasn't gonna say anything, but you know that. So glad was on Yeah.
Because I say to you, why are you admonishing your fellow board members? I'm sorry. I don't think
Thank you.